Oh, unfortunately, Aliyah Boston did not win the 1v1 tournament Unrivaled. By the way, she was this close to making the finals, scoring 12 straight points versus Alicia Gray. Alicia Gray hit a crazy game winner. Like, I have to say, Alicia Gray hit a crazy game winner to win that game. That being said, like, what Aliyah Boston showed was...
They weren't ready for this version of Aliyah Boston. That's the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. They talked about balance, about systems, about team-first basketball. But underneath all of it was fear. Fear of what happens when patience turns into power and the quiet star stops waiting her turn. Aliyah didn't arrive this season loud. She arrived heavier, stronger, sharper, like someone who'd spent an entire year listening to what wasn't said. Watching Caitlin Clark take the shots. Watching Angel Reese take the heat. Watching Paige Buchers carry expectations. And all the while, Aliyah absorbed something dangerous, clarity. She saw how narratives were built, how faces were chosen, how dominance was celebrated only when it fit a storyline. And she decided she wasn't going to ask for space anymore. She was going to take it. The league noticed before fans did. Coaches felt it in film sessions. Defenders felt it in their ribs. Teammates felt it in the way the floor tilted toward her presence. Aliyah wasn't forcing anything. That was the terrifying part. She was dictating everything. Pace, matchups, outcomes. But here's what really shook the WNBA. Aliyah didn't just look better. She looked inevitable. Like the center of gravity had shifted and everyone else was reacting a half-second late. The smiles stopped. The chatter quieted. Because takeover seasons don't announce themselves. They expose the people who underestimated what was coming. Social media tried to keep up. Analysts hesitated. Rivals pretended not to notice. But the signs were everywhere. The post moved sharper. The touch softer. The confidence colder. This wasn't growth. This was preparation. And as the season tipped forward, one uncomfortable question started circling the league. If Aliyah Boston is about to take over the WNBA, who exactly is ready to stop her? Aliyah Boston didn't wake up one morning and decide to dominate the WNBA. This was years in the making, carved out of silence, sacrifice, and the kind of pressure that doesn't trend on social media. Long before the cameras zoomed in and the debates turned toxic, Aliyah learned how to survive being overlooked without breaking. She learned how to smile while carrying expectations that never fully belonged to her. At South Carolina, she was the foundation, the anchor, the one who made everything work while others collected the shine. Wins stacked up, banners rose, and Aliyah did what she always did. She absorbed responsibility without demanding credit. People called her steady, reliable, safe, words that sounded like praise but quietly boxed her in. She noticed. She always noticed. Then the league arrived, and with it came the noise. Caitlin Clark was the lightning bolt. Angel Reese was the firestorm. Paige Buchers was the comeback story everyone wanted to believe in. The WNBA found its new faces, its new debates, its new villains and heroes. Aliyah was mentioned, sure, but rarely centered. She was the important piece, never the headline. Inside locker rooms, the dynamics were different. Teammates leaned on her. Coaches trusted her instincts. But trust doesn't always translate to freedom. There were plays drawn where she was the decoy. Games where her dominance was managed, rationed, contained for balance. And Aliyah played along, because that's who she had always been. The one who did what the team needed, even if it cost her visibility. But pressure changes people. And the pressure around Aliyah wasn't just about basketball. It was about identity. About whether being calm meant being passive. About whether humility was being mistaken for hesitation. About whether a black woman who led quietly would ever be allowed to lead loudly. She felt it every time her name trended below others after a win. Every time highlights skipped past her screens, her seals, her defensive rotations. Every time the conversation shifted to what she didn't do, instead of what she controlled. Aliyah didn't argue. She stored it. Behind closed doors, her routine hardened. Extra film. Extra reps. A body already elite pushed further. Not for aesthetics, but for authority. She stopped asking what role she fit into and started asking what would happen if the offense bent to her will instead of around her presence. The league didn't notice the shift at first. They were too busy arguing about rivalries. Too busy inflating comparisons. too busy feeding the culture war that surrounded women's basketball. But Aliyah noticed something else: how quickly narratives turn on women who demand more. How confidence gets labeled arrogance the moment it's no longer convenient. She watched veterans warn her quietly. She listened when coaches spoke in half sentences about balance and flow. And she made a decision that scared even her. She would stop shrinking herself to keep others comfortable. The emotional toll was real. There were nights she questioned whether being more aggressive would fracture chemistry. Whether dominance would invite backlash she wasn't sure she wanted. Whether stepping forward meant being isolated when the criticism came. Because it always comes. And it came early. A missed shot here. A turnover there. Suddenly the tone shifted. Analysts questioned her fit. Fans debated her ceiling. The same calm demeanor that once earned praise was reframed as a lack of fire. Aliyah felt the familiar burn of being misunderstood. But this time she didn't retreat. She leaned in. She began calling for the ball more. Holding eye contact longer. Finishing through contact without apology. The game slowed for her, but the noise around her grew louder. Some teammates adjusted. Others struggled. The locker room energy changed, subtle but undeniable. Leadership, it turns out, makes people uncomfortable when it rearranges hierarchy. Aliyah didn't flinch. She had spent too long being everyone's safety net to fear becoming the center of gravity. And deep down, she knew something most people didn't yet understand. This wasn't about ego. This was about timing. About a league at a crossroads. About whether the WNBA was ready for a takeover that didn't ask permission. As the season approached, whispers started circulating. Coaches exchanged looks during preseason film. Opposing players spoke her name differently. Not casually, not dismissively, carefully, because something had shifted, and it wasn't just skill. It was intent. And the moment Aliyah Boston finally decided to stop waiting for recognition and start demanding results, the entire league unknowingly stepped into the most uncomfortable chapter of its season. One that would force everyone to choose sides. Because once a player like Aliyah realizes how much power she's been holding back, there's no going back. The first real crack didn't come during a game. It came in a closed-door meeting that wasn't supposed to leak. Coaches around the league had gathered under the safe language of competitive balance. But everyone in the room knew the truth. The conversation wasn't about balance at all. It was about control. About what happens when a player stops fitting neatly into the roles the league has already marketed. Aliyah Boston's name landed on the table like a weight. Not praise. Not criticism. Concern. Too dominant too fast. Too central. Too difficult to scheme around without reshaping entire game plans. One coach joked nervously that you could feel her presence even when she wasn't touching the ball. Nobody laughed. Because it was true. On the court, the shift was undeniable. Plays that once flowed through guards now stalled unless Aliyah approved them with a nod or a seal. Teammates began hesitating, not out of resentment, but uncertainty. Was this still a shared offense, or had it become something else? The numbers told one story: efficiency, wins, defensive dominance. The body language told another. Eyes darting, shoulders tense, a hierarchy being rewritten in real time. Then came the whispers. That Aliyah was calling too much. That she was changing the system. That she wasn't reading the room. The same behaviors celebrated in others were suddenly labeled disruptive when they came from her. And Aliyah felt it immediately. The temperature in practice. The tone in film sessions. The way praise started coming with qualifiers. She didn't confront it. She confronted the game. Her usage went up. Her impact exploded. And with every dominant performance, the tension thickened. Caitlin Clark's gravity still pulled headlines. Angel Reese's intensity still fueled debates. Paige Bucher's health still carried hope. But something dangerous was happening beneath all of it. Aliyah was becoming unavoidable without being marketable in the same way. And that scared people. The first public flashpoint came after a nationally televised win where Aliyah controlled the fourth quarter without scoring a single basket. Screens, rebounds, defensive rotations that erased entire possessions. Analysts praised her IQ, but quickly pivoted to questions about whether her style was exciting enough to lead the league's next era. Social media split instantly. Supporters called it disrespect. Critics called it realism. Aliyah said nothing. Behind the scenes, frustration boiled over. A veteran teammate confronted her privately, accusing her of hijacking rhythm. Another defended her just as fiercely. The locker room fractured into quiet camps. Not enemies, something worse. Polite disagreement. The kind that never resolves and always festers. Then came the game that changed everything. Late in the third quarter, after a blown coverage that wasn't her fault, Aliyah called out a switch loudly. Too loudly for some tastes. Cameras caught it. Clips went viral. Suddenly the narrative wasn't dominance, it was attitude. Commentators replayed it in slow motion, reading tone into silence. The league had found its opening. Within days, an anonymous quote surfaced in a major outlet. A source close to the team claimed Aliyah's leadership style was creating strain. No name, no context, just enough doubt to spread like smoke. Fans argued. Teammates were asked pointed questions. Coaches deflected with rehearsed answers. Aliyah read the article alone. She didn't slam her phone. She didn't text anyone. She sat still, recognizing the pattern. This wasn't criticism. This was containment. The shocking twist came when the coaching staff adjusted rotations without explanation. Fewer touches early. Shorter leash on mistakes. A subtle message delivered without words. Aliyah noticed immediately. The team felt it too. The offense stalled, the defense softened. But instead of correcting course, the staff doubled down, framing it as experimentation. That's when Aliyah did the unthinkable. In the middle of a tight fourth quarter, after being waved off twice, she stopped calling for the ball. She became a decoy by choice. The offense collapsed. The loss was ugly. And afterward, for the first time all season, Aliyah spoke. Not angrily, not emotionally, but clearly. "We didn't trust what was working," she said. "That's something we have to look at." It was a single sentence. It detonated. Media framed it as a shot at coaching. Fans split harder. League insiders panicked. Because Aliyah hadn't lashed out. She'd exposed a truth everyone was pretending not to see. That her dominance was being negotiated instead of embraced. The backlash was immediate. Commentators accused her of deflecting blame. Former players weighed in with coded warnings about staying in your lane. Social media turned vicious overnight. And through it all, Aliyah stayed steady, refusing to backtrack or soften her words. Then the real shock hit. A leaked internal memo surfaced online, allegedly outlining concerns about over-centralization around one player and its impact on branding flexibility. Branding, not basketball. The document vanished within hours, but it was too late. Screenshots spread. Hashtags exploded. Fans connected dots the league never wanted connected. Aliyah Boston wasn't just fighting defenders anymore. She was fighting a system uncomfortable with her power. Teammates were pulled into private meetings. Coaches issued statements about unity. The league office stayed silent, a silence louder than any denial. And Aliyah realized something terrifying and clarifying all at once. This wasn't about whether she could take over the WNBA. It was about whether she'd be allowed to. As the next game approached, the arena buzzed with tension. Every touch would be scrutinized. Every expression dissected. And Aliyah knew the choice in front of her was bigger than minutes or shots. She could shrink back and restore peace. Or she could push forward and force the league to reveal its hand. And as she laced up that night, one thing was clear. Whatever she chose next would shatter the illusion of control someone else thought they had. The arena felt different before tip-off, like everyone knew they were about to witness something they wouldn't be able to unsee. The warm-ups were louder. The cameras lingered longer on Aliyah Boston's face. Not smiling, not scowling, focused in a way that made people uneasy. This wasn't anger. This was resolve. From the opening possession, the tension was suffocating. The offense hesitated, as if unsure who was allowed to lead anymore. Aliyah sealed deep, wide open, and the pass never came. She didn't react. She sprinted back on defense and erased a layup at the rim so violently the crowd gasped. The message was subtle but sharp. If you won't feed me, I'll take everything else. Possession after possession, she controlled the game without permission. Rebounds ripped away. Screens set with purpose. Defensive rotations that shut down entire actions before they even developed. The scoreboard stayed close, but the energy tilted toward her gravity. And that's when the boos started, not from opponents' fans, but from her own arena, confused and divided, reacting to a team that looked like it was actively avoiding its best weapon. Social media exploded in real time. Clips of Aliyah being ignored circulated with captions dripping in disbelief. Analysts tried to spin it as strategy. Nobody bought it. The body language was undeniable. Something was broken, and everyone could see the cracks spreading. Midway through the second quarter, a timeout turned icy. Cameras caught raised voices. A clipboard slammed. Aliyah stood apart, arms crossed, eyes locked on the floor. When play resumed, the adjustment was obvious. The offense ran through her. Immediately, the game flipped. Buckets. Free throws. Collapsing defenses. The crowd roared, relief washing over frustration. And then, just as quickly, it was taken away again. She was subbed out after a single defensive lapse. 1. The bench reaction was instant. Teammates looked stunned. Fans booed openly. Aliyah didn't argue. She sat down, jaw tight, hands folded, staring straight ahead as if memorizing the moment. This wasn't discipline. This was a message. The second half turned chaotic. The team struggled. The lead evaporated. Every missed shot amplified the decision to limit her. And with each possession, the narrative online hardened. This wasn't basketball anymore. It was politics playing out on hardwood. The second major twist came not from the court, but from the tunnel. During a dead ball, cameras caught a brief exchange between Aliyah and a league official seated courtside. No audio, just eye contact. A nod, a hand gesture that suggested later. The clip went viral within minutes. Speculation went nuclear. Was she complaining? Warning? Negotiating? Nobody knew, and that uncertainty poured gasoline on everything. After the game, a brutal loss that left the locker room silent, Aliyah didn't speak to the media. Instead, a story broke from a trusted insider. Aliyah Boston had formally requested a private meeting with league leadership. Not about minutes. Not about touches. About transparency. That single word sent shockwaves through the WNBA. Transparency implied secrets. Transparency implied decisions being made in shadows. Transparency implied that what fans were watching wasn't accidental. League officials scrambled to control the narrative, releasing a carefully worded statement about open dialogue and player-coach alignment. It satisfied no one. Inside the team, the fallout was immediate. Players were divided. Some relieved someone had finally spoken up, others terrified of the consequences. Veterans warned her quietly about how the league treats difficult stars. Younger players watched closely, seeing a future version of themselves in her defiance. Aliyah felt the weight of it all, but she didn't back down. In practice, the tension sharpened. Every drill felt like a test. Every mistake magnified. Coaches grew clipped. Conversations ended abruptly when she entered rooms. The isolation wasn't subtle anymore. Then came the leak that changed everything. A second document surfaced, this one allegedly from a league advisory group, discussing market optimization and narrative alignment around emerging stars. Aliyah's name appeared in a section labeled Performance First Profiles. Not as a compliment, as a challenge. Someone had categorized her dominance as something to be managed, not maximized. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. Fans accused the league of suppressing players who didn't fit a marketable mold. Former players spoke out. Current stars liked posts without commenting, sending silent signals of support. The league denied the document's authenticity, but the damage was done. Aliyah finally spoke publicly again, and this time her voice carried steel. "I love this game," she said, "but loving it doesn't mean staying quiet when something's wrong." That was it. No accusations. No details. Just enough to confirm what everyone feared. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a standoff. The next game became must-watch television. Every possession felt loaded. Aliyah played like someone who had accepted the cost of being honest. Dominant. Controlled. Unapologetic. And for the first time, the team followed her lead completely. The win was decisive. The message undeniable. But as she walked off the court, cameras caught her expression again. Not satisfied. Not relieved. Concerned. Because she knew something the crowd didn't yet understand. Standing up had shifted the balance of power. And power never shifts quietly. Behind the scenes, meetings multiplied. Phone calls stretched late into the night. Decisions were being made that would reshape more than one roster. More than one career. Aliyah Boston had forced the league to respond. And whatever response was coming next would define not just her season, but the future of how dominance is treated in the WNBA. The fallout hit before the final buzzer echoes even faded. It spilled out of arenas and into timelines, group chats, TV panels, and private league calls that stretched deep into the night. Aliyah Boston had crossed an invisible line, and the world reacted like it always does when a woman refuses to shrink back into comfort. Hashtags detonated within minutes. Some framed her as a hero finally exposing the truth everyone whispered about. Others painted her as a problem, a disruptor, someone making it bigger than basketball. The divide was sharp, emotional, and deeply personal. This wasn't about one player anymore. It was about power, voice, and who gets to define leadership in the WNBA. Analysts argued in circles. One praised her courage. Another warned about consequences. Former players took sides, some speaking openly, others choosing silence, so loud it felt intentional. Every clip of Aliyah was slowed down, zoomed in, dissected. Her expressions were psychoanalyzed. Her tone scrutinized. Calm was called cold. Confidence was labeled defiance. Inside the locker room, the atmosphere turned fragile. Conversations lowered when she walked in. Not out of hostility, but fear. Fear of association. Fear of being asked where they stood. A few teammates pulled her aside in quiet support, thanking her for saying what they couldn't. Others kept their distance, worried that proximity might cost them minutes, opportunities, futures. Aliyah felt it all. The support warmed her, but the isolation cut deeper. Leadership, she learned, doesn't just elevate, it separates. Nights got heavier. Sleep came slower. Every phone buzz carried the possibility of another headline, another leak, another distortion of her words. The league tried to regain control. Kathy Engelbert addressed the situation with carefully measured language about dialogue and growth, avoiding Aliyah's name entirely. Fans noticed. The avoidance only fueled speculation. Why not say her name? Why not deny the documents outright? Silence became evidence in the court of public opinion. Then sponsors got involved. Some doubled down, posting vague messages about empowerment and authenticity. Others quietly paused campaigns. A few brands waited, watching the temperature, calculating risk. Aliyah's image, once clean, dependable, safe, was suddenly labeled complex. And complexity in corporate spaces often reads as danger. The emotional weight reached a breaking point during a road game when boos rained down during introductions. Not from hatred alone, but from confusion weaponized into noise. Aliyah stood still, hands at her sides, breathing through it. Cameras caught the moment her eyes closed for half a second longer than usual. It went viral instantly. Captions varied. Overwhelmed. Unbothered. Breaking. On the court, she played through it. Dominant but restrained, as if balancing performance with survival. Every bucket was cheered and questioned. Every foul call sparked debate. She couldn't move without interpretation. And yet, through all of it, she never looked away. The most painful blow came quietly. A former mentor, someone she trusted, went on air and suggested Aliyah had misread the moment. That she should have handled it internally. That public pressure rarely ends well for players. Aliyah watched the clip alone. This one hurt. Because it wasn't malicious. It was caution disguised as disappointment. Fans flooded her comments with support, anger, heartbreak. Young players thanked her for speaking up. Others begged her to protect herself. The emotional whiplash was relentless. Aliyah realized that no matter what happened next, she had already changed something. The question was whether the change would survive her. Then, late one night, another story dropped. A report claimed the league was considering structural adjustments to address recent controversies. Vague, strategic. But buried in the article was a single line that froze everything. Discussions included re-evaluating player roles within competitive frameworks. Re-evaluating roles. Aliyah read it twice. Then a third time. This wasn't backlash anymore. It was movement. The public fallout had reached the point where the league couldn't ignore her, and that meant they might try to reshape the environment around her instead. Fans erupted again. Accusations flew. The league denied targeting anyone specifically, but nobody believed it. As Aliyah prepared for the next game, she understood the stakes with brutal clarity. Speaking up had cost her peace. Staying silent now wouldn't get it back. She stood at a crossroads with no safe path forward. And as the lights came on and the cameras locked in once more, one question hung heavier than ever over the WNBA. Would the league bend to protect its image? Or would it break trying to contain Aliyah Boston? The final twist didn't arrive with a press release or a breaking news banner. It arrived as a pause, a delay, a silence so deliberate it felt engineered. The league postponed its scheduled announcement without explanation, and that absence spoke louder than any statement ever could. Something was being recalculated, not debated, not discussed, repositioned. Aliyah felt it before anyone told her. The way her phone stopped buzzing. The way conversations around her shifted from reactive to cautious. People weren't asking questions anymore. They were waiting for permission to speak. And that's when she knew the decision wasn't about whether she was right. It was about how much disruption the league could tolerate. Then, hours before tip-off, the message finally came. A closed-door meeting. Mandatory attendance. League representatives present. No media. No recording devices. Just power, concentrated and quiet. Inside the room, the tone was clinical. Polite. Almost friendly. Words like alignment, path forward, and protecting the product floated through the air like they weren't loaded with consequences. Aliyah listened without interrupting, watching how carefully they avoided the word control while describing it in detail. They praised her professionalism, her impact, her importance, and then they offered a solution. Not discipline, not punishment, something more subtle, a strategic recalibration for the remainder of the season, framed as relief, support, balance. But beneath the language was a clear message. Her influence needed boundaries. Aliyah asked one question. Just one. Who decided this? The room shifted. No immediate answer. Eyes moved. Papers adjusted. And in that hesitation, the truth surfaced without being spoken. This wasn't coming from one coach or one executive. It was structural, collective, designed to look inevitable. She nodded slowly, thanked them, stood up, and walked out. By the time warm-ups began, rumors were already circulating. Something was off. Aliyah's expression was unreadable, but her body language told a different story. Calm, yes, but resolved in a way that scared people who understood what it meant when she played with nothing left to negotiate. The game unfolded like a storm breaking. From the first possession, Aliyah dominated with a precision that felt intentional. Every move sharp, every decision final. She wasn't forcing shots. She was dictating terms. The defense collapsed. Teammates followed. The crowd felt it building, that hum of witnessing something irreversible. And then midway through the third quarter, it happened. Aliyah signaled to the bench. At first, people thought it was fatigue. Then confusion rippled through the arena as she walked toward the sideline during a dead ball. Not to sub out, but to the scorer's table. Officials hesitated. The crowd went silent. Cameras scrambled. She removed her warm-up jacket. Underneath, taped to her jersey, was a single phrase written in bold black letters. "Let me play." The arena erupted. Shock. Cheers. Gasps. Phones shot into the air. Security froze. Officials conferred frantically. This wasn't protest by absence. This was confrontation by presence. Aliyah wasn't stepping away from the game. She was daring the league to stop her in front of everyone. Broadcasters stumbled over their words. Social media exploded instantly. Clips spread faster than anyone could contain them. Fans cried. Critics panicked. The league's worst fear had materialized in real time. Not chaos, but clarity. Aliyah stood still at mid-court, hands on her hips, eyes locked forward. She didn't shout, didn't gesture, didn't explain. She didn't need to. The message was undeniable. This wasn't about minutes. This was about freedom. Officials finally approached. A quiet exchange. A warning. Cameras zoomed in on her face, searching for fear. They didn't find it. They found peace, the kind that comes when someone accepts whatever comes next. She nodded once. Play resumed. But the game no longer mattered. Because somewhere between that signal and that silence, Aliyah Boston had forced the WNBA into its most dangerous position yet. Having to choose between maintaining control or admitting the system was never built to handle players like her. As the final buzzer approached, nobody knew what consequences were coming. Fines, suspensions, policy changes, or something bigger, something structural. Aliyah walked off the court without looking back. And as the league prepared its response behind closed doors, one terrifying reality settled in. They could silence her voice, but they had no idea how to silence what she had just awakened. What you just witnessed isn't just a moment, it's a line in the sand. Because whether you cheer for Aliyah Boston or not, whether you love her game or feel uncomfortable with her power, one truth is now impossible to ignore. The WNBA is changing, and not everyone is ready for who's leading that change. This is bigger than one jersey, one game, or one season. This is about who gets to be loud, who gets to be dominant, and who gets labeled a problem the moment they stop fitting the script. Aliyah didn't ask for permission. She didn't soften her edges. She didn't retreat when the pressure mounted. And that choice forced the league and the fans to show their hands. Now the question isn't what the WNBA will do next. The question is what you will do. Because silence is also a side. Engagement is power. And narratives don't survive without an audience willing to accept them without question. If you believe players should be free to lead without being managed, say it. If you think dominance shouldn't come with disclaimers, show it. If you're tired of watching women punished for ambition, amplify the truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments, not the safe ones, the real ones. Was Aliyah right to take a stand? Did the league cross a line? Or is this the growing pain of a sport finally confronting its own contradictions? Share this story. Challenge the takes you hear on TV. Pay attention to what happens next, not just to Aliyah, but to every player watching how this plays out and deciding whether speaking up is worth the cost. Because make no mistake, what happens after this will ripple far beyond one locker room. It will shape how stars lead, how power is distributed, and how history remembers this era of women's basketball. The WNBA didn't just face a controversy. It faced a mirror. And once a league is forced to look at itself this closely, there's no unseeing what's been revealed. Stay locked in. This story isn't over. It's just getting dangerous.